Welcome in to another episode of Cheese Focus Live. We've got a lot of news to go over. Final roster cut downs happened. Some guys were cut. Some guys stayed that maybe you didn't think that were going to stay. Royals have added, or the Royals, the Chiefs have added a new wide receiver into their room, and Juju Smith-Schuster, and it doesn't look like Rice is going to get suspended. Plus, don't know if you know this, but a week from now we've got a game. My name is Quentin Morris. We got this running the show in the background, and now a guy whose season I think started 2 weeks ago. I don't know when school starts anymore.
Yep,
When you're not
couple
in
weeks.
it, so you don't know. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, something
Couple
like
weeks.
that. That's Caleb. How are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Doing pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
A little busy. A little Freudian slip there because I got the Royals game. Well, I turned off, but I'm keeping an eye on the score. It's still tied.
No, I got you.
Yeah, let's just get into some of this. Let's just get into some of this Royals news. Dang it, I did it again. This Chiefs
The
news.
Royals news, man. You really
I know.
love the Royals.
When you have a playoff baseball team, people
you get happy a
pay
little bit.
attention. So let's just get some of the simple stuff out of the way. Kadarius Toney was cut. That is not shocking news to me. I think it's a good thing for the team because Kadarius Toney didn't bring you anything that you didn't already have, and to me, that he was just causing more problems for the team, and he just didn't seem to really put the effort in towards the end of there, right? I mean, there just didn't seem to be any motivation from him, so you move on from the guy, and you sort of wash your hands with it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised with the move. When you look at Kadarius Toney, I mean, he did good, and then he had this just decline, just dropped off. And I want him to stay with the team and see what he could do. But I feel like it was kind of the beginning and the end when they moved him to running back-ish to see what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is like Traymon Smith a few years ago was with the Chiefs as a cornerback. There were none of cornerback spots, and he ended up trying to be a running back, and it just didn't work. So unfortunately, as you see, these things happen, and it's just as frustrating as it can be. It's for the best because she's gotten some other talent in different areas that's going to help things be better along the line for Mahomes.
Yeah, and then they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster, which to me it's just one of those, bring a veteran back in type deals. I mean, he'll be the fifth wide receiver in this room, right? Like, I'm not expecting him to be all that productive. I will say the good thing about it is, that's a guy that, who knows the system. And if you don't have to depend on a guy that has an injury history, right, like Juju Smith-Schuster, if you're not depending on him to be your number one wide receiver or a significant part of the offense, then I think that puts you in a really good position. You've got your sort of three-headed monster in your wide receiver room already figured out. Anything past three, that's back end of the roster guys, and I'm not really all that concerned about them.
Yeah, and I agree. When you look at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where it had to happen. The Chiefs brought in someone familiar. It's just only going to make the offense better. As much as we like KT for what he did help out, but it just didn't work out towards the end. The Chiefs are in a better position now. I feel like in the wide receiver room where there shouldn't be any issues of moving the ball down the field. So I feel like things are going to work out eventually, and so I'm not worried. But to have Juju back is going to be a huge, huge relief. But the issue is he going to be healthy? That's the one thing I'm kind of looking at there.
Yeah. One of the surprises, I thought Remigio was going to make the roster. You had Dave Tobe come out and say that, he was really banging the table for Remigio. They seemed to like him as the kick returner, right? That's what he was really good in college. And he gets, cut off the 53-man roster. And that just surprised me because when Dave Tobe says that he really likes a guy, he usually gets to keep that guy. So I was just surprised to see that Dave Tobe, maybe for the first time, just didn't get to keep his guy. And especially when you talk about your fifth, sixth wide receivers, they have to contribute in special teams. And so that was just I was really shocked when that came across my timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he should have made the roster. I mean, looking at guys, and I'm not trying to bash one, but like Sky Moore really hasn't done much for the Chiefs, had some moments here and there. And there's been some other guys that they have on the roster. I'm kind of like, you could have made a spot for him, but is he on our practice squad? Are you aware of that by any chance?
I'm
feel like
pretty
he is.
Yeah.
So they can still have him to be used for certain things, but I also know at the same time, too, it's like that's some talent that another team may scoop up and sweep. But I feel like I think he knows there is an opportunity here if he stays. So hopefully he can get the elevation. But between him and Justin Ross, I don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I
Ross
feel like these
and
guys just won't get an opportunity, just how deep this room is this year.
yeah, both Justin Ross and Remigio make the initial practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both still on the roster, kind of roster
Mm-hmm.
adjacent. But yeah, it was just really weird that Dave Tope says, "Hey, I really like this guy. I really want this guy
Mm-hmm.
to be on the 53," and then he doesn't make it. Because we
Yep.
talk about all the time that Dave Tope, the last 2-3 guys on the roster, those are Dave Tope guys. He's the one that gets the sort of the final say, and he didn't get one of his guys. And maybe he had too many. I don't know, but it was just a really weird development
Yeah.
inside of that. So
I
that
would feel as if it is frustrating. It is. At least we have them ready to go. But I just don't see realistically how they're going to get an opportunity to play unless someone just gets hurt.
right, that's
Honestly.
that's what would have to happen, or whoever they end up saying that, like if Sky Moore just can't return kicks or whatever, right? Like
That
that would
may
have to be.
happen.
It's either a skill level or an injury that's going
Mhm.
to bring one of these guys back up.
Yeah.
And I think
Good point.
Remigio gets the first chance just because of we've seen what he can do,
You on the
in
kicks.
special teams. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
was really it was that. It was really the kick returner, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
with the new rules and all of that, like you're going to get more kick returns, and you now don't have the guy that you thought was the best at it. I don't know who they're are expecting to be the kick returner. Do they have Is Sky Moore going to be their kick returner? I'm
I don't
not
know
sure
who they're
what
going to
their
put back
plan
there.
is
Maybe
with
they
that.
put Worthy.
Maybe, but maybe that's it because they want him to get on the field, and with his explosiveness,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's it. That's an interesting thought.
That's the only thing I can think of possibly. I mean, when you look at it, it's just a deep wide receiver room. And as much as I want the Chiefs to develop talent, I just don't see how they're ever going to get developed wide receiver talent when you have these top guys coming in every so often, and then you occasionally get Xavier Worthy and then the first round. So I don't know what's going to happen, but ultimately in the day, I feel like the Chiefs are going to be fine wide receiver perspective, not only on the roster but the practice squad in the event they need someone.
Let's talk about some other specialist players. Louis Reams Zamet
Mm-hmm.
was cut, and he signed with the Jaguars. So
Yep.
he is no longer a Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts when you saw that? Because I was a little bit surprised by that.
I wasn't surprised, but I thought they would have kept on the team to see how he could do in kick returns. Maybe see how he would do there in certain situations. I feel like his rugby style would be able to help the Chiefs, or specifically in this new kick return style. But it didn't happen, didn't work out. I think he did a lot of his training for the NFL down in Jacksonville, so I wouldn't be surprised if Doug Peterson. So I'm like, we'll see if he comes around. But ultimately, again, there's just not enough room on this roster. Steele, who's doing his thing, made it over him. I feel like ultimately the day, just how he was playing, just had a little bit more experience and did things that were a lot better in certain situations. So I feel ultimately that was kind of the main reason why that didn't happen, because Steele was able to do his thing there.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify my statement. I wasn't surprised that he didn't make the roster, the 53, because I always was expecting him to make the practice squad. I guess I
Mm-hmm.
was just more surprised that another team picked him up.
Mm-hmm.
I just like that thought never really crossed my mind that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm surprised that there's not some sort of a safety net for guys like that to be able to stay with one team. But hey, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Good for him. Maybe he'll be the Jacksonville Jaguars kick returner, and
Yeah.
he can go play special teams with the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely not surprised that he made the 53 man, that he didn't make it. I think that was the entire conversation we've had this offseason, is about how you're not signing him to a contract for this year. You're signing him to that contract for the future, which is why they signed him to a multi-year deal.
Yeah. And also, too, this is why I've been advocating for years that the NFL needs to let teams have their own kind of minor league football, so you can kind of keep people in a system to see what they can do over time. It's only going to help if you let these practice squad guys go play against each other. You can kind of do packages and things trading along those lines. So I feel like that could be very helpful as well. But ultimately, we'll probably never get to that system like baseball has.
Yeah, their minor league system is called college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically. And as much as I would like to see a different system happen, I just don't see it.
Yeah.
So the practice squad, I feel like they should have an opportunity to play against other individuals and showcase their talent, but they're doing that in practice. So
The last notable name here that I just wanted to bring up is that the Chiefs cut Lucas Niang, right? It
they
was a draft
did.
pick from a few years ago, and
Hmm.
he was
The
supposed
COVID
to be
year.
your he was supposed to be your starting left tackle. Held out for the COVID year, and then never seemed. I believe he got injured.
He
Uh,
played some games,
yeah,
got
and then he got
injured.
hurt, and he just never really found his way back onto the field.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much.
just I mean, isn't that's just the story of an NFL player, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just a guy that could never really seem to get his footing. And I know that there are some Chiefs fans out there that are still wondering if he had played during that COVID year,
Hmm.
would he have been a part of this team long term,
Hmm.
or him missing out on that rookie year? What did he miss out on something very important? Did he miss out on some of that development, and was he delayed because of that?
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me. He excuse me. He decided to do what he wanted to do and sat out. I feel like maybe it did hurt his development, but at the same time, it just didn't work out. When he was coming out of the draft, the Chiefs. There was a interview, and Chase Young, who used to play for the Ohio State football team, was saying this was the hardest guy I've ever had to go against. Whenever I would be trying to rush, and you knew Niang was a tank, but for some reason, it just never translated. This is the second offensive lineman the Chiefs have drafted in the last 4 or 5 years that just has not worked out. Name was last one, and then most recently, it was that guy from Kentucky, Kennard. So unfortunately, this is just what happens at certain points.
Yeah, that's just and I mean he's a failed draft pick. I mean, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens, right? Not everything you
Works
touch
out.
turns to gold, right? And outstanding circumstances. It's just one of those things that it's just a name that people would recognize, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with all of that said, those are the main names that you'll recognize. Overall, the off season, do you feel like that there's a part on this team that it still has a major weakness to it? Do you think that there is one player that you're interested in moving forward throughout the season? Let's just get
Mm-hmm.
one final sort of episode to where we can combine everything into our final thoughts
Mm-hmm.
before we play our first game next week.
Honestly, just the offense, not the offense, the defensive line, just I feel like they didn't get better. They stayed the same. And we know with this defense line, sometimes they can turn up and sometimes they don't turn up. And it causes them to struggle. So when I look at that, I'm like, I'm kind of worried. I'm not going to lie when looking at those different things. So, but ultimately, that's the only area I can look at where I'm concerned. A player to see what they can do. I'm really curious to see. I forgot that guy's name, but he's a safety. And Tyron Matthew was talking with, I think it's from Tennessee. The
Hicks.
third Hicks.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I
Man,
mean,
that's
again, the
see, you
Chiefs have
stole you
nailed
stole it for
another.
I should have gone first. That was gonna
Yeah.
be my guy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, that Jaden Hicks,
Mhm.
when they drafted him, I believe on our draft show, I talked about how,
Mhm.
this is sort of gonna be like to keep an eye on him.
Mhm.
Um, because I was saying that, Brett Veach doesn't have a Midas touch for everything, but he sure as hell does for defensive backs.
Yes. We need a
Every
lot of
time they
them.
every time they bring somebody in when they draft somebody, and we've seen that a little bit from Chamari Connor so far in the preseason, and I think he's going
Mhm.
to be a big contributor to this team. And
Mhm.
then I'm, laying down my cards early on Hicks and
Mhm.
what I think his development is going to be.
Yep.
I think that you're going to have Chamari Connor step up and be sort of that second safety slot corner guy. And I
Mhm.
think Hicks is this year's Chamari Connor, where you're going to see when he gets out on the field, his limited role, right? He's going to get out there and he's going to make some damn good plays, and people are
Mhm.
going to be surprised by him. But that's a name that people need to keep an eye on, because I think that moving forward, not this year, but next year and afterwards, that's
Mhm.
a name that people are going to recognize. So yeah,
And it's
I
good. Mhm.
100% agree with you on there. Oh, we lost Caleb. The other thing that I actually wanted to talk about is this defensive line. It is another thing that Caleb brought up, and I actually am worried a little bit about this defensive line, only because that the defensive line for the Chiefs, they didn't really add a whole lot to it, and
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
Yes.
And so Kansas City didn't do a whole lot to it. Now you retained the best defensive tackle in the NFL, right?
Mhm.
Who
Paid him
who
some
has been
money.
who's been consistent in getting pressure, but also I'm less worried about it just because the last couple of years Kansas City has had a quote unquote weakness at defensive line, and they've made it work.
Mhm.
They were 1 sack short of tying a franchise record in sacks last year. So even though the names on this team aren't gonna bring out anything, we know that Steve Spagnuolo can get pressure from the slot
Yep.
corner, can get pressure from that hybrid safety, your Chamari Connors of the world, can get pressure from the linebacking blitzing. So it's not as big of a deal with Kansas City just because I do know that there are going to be other ways to manufacture pressure,
Mhm.
but the defensive line in itself, I do think could be viewed as a weakness.
Yeah, and I agree. And when you look at the defensive line, you notice and see over time, like you said, they didn't get better, but they also really didn't make any moves. So maybe the addition is on Moneyhu when he comes, but I just feel like the past, the Chiefs have struggled because they haven't got no pressure from the defensive line. And again, the cornerbacks can only do so much. Things start breaking down in different levels when they can't get pressure after 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds.
Yeah, I think FAU has got to be the biggest question mark on this roster.
Yes, that is a good
Um,
point.
if he comes in and he's able to get he's a 6 sack guy, then I think that you should be extremely happy with what this defensive line is moving forward, right?
hmm
But if he comes in and he struggles and he's not really able to get pressure, or he's not able to, break off of a tackle or anything like that, then if FAU struggles, then I think that's going to be the health of the defensive line.
Hmm.
He was your first round pick last year. We were when that pick happened, we all knew that he was a red shirt, right?
hmm
We all knew that there wasn't really a spot for him last year because of the depth, because of the guys that were already on the team, and that was a draft pick for this year. And it's his time to shine, right? He's going to have the opportunities to do it. He's going to have the plays, the time on the field to do it. And if it's sink or swim, man, it's your opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what it looks like when you look at. And Philip brings up a great point. He says Thomas recorded 3 sacks during the 2024 preseason, more than any Chiefs defensive lineman. Thomas is a young, cheaper version of Minihue. I think Philip is right. Vita's doing a good job of finding guys speed, better versions later down the line, and also just to say that's just going to help this team later down the line when they need it the most. You got to find this talent whenever people don't see it and store them on your practice squad if you can.
Yeah, especially because you won't get Omenahu back until week 6, 7, or 8 at the earliest. And then when
Probably
you get
pushing
him
10,
back,
11. Mm-hmm.
if you do, or when you get him back, he's not going to be like it was last year, where
Mm-hmm.
you could just throw him into the lineup and call it good. No, he suffered a significant injury very
Yeah,
late into the year.
ACL tear.
So whenever he comes back, man, he's going to have to be on a snap count. He's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be the guy that he was last year, and it's going to take time for him to get back. So you do need to depend on some of the other guys that are along that defensive line, and somebody has to step up. Whether it is FAU or the gentleman that you were just talking about, somebody's
Mm-hmm.
going to have to step up, because I think
Yeah.
Karloftis is probably a 10 sack guy moving forward, which is great. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
makes him a top 15
That's
defensive
perfect. We
lineman.
need him.
Exactly, that makes him a top 15 defensive lineman in the NFL, paired
Mm-hmm.
with Chris Jones. But you're going to need that one more guy, right? You just need one more guy to be able to come in and step up
Yep.
in order to start making plays. It's like having that third wide receiver. I don't need my third wide receiver to be elite. But
Mm-hmm.
when I need someone to go and make a play, I need him to be available, and that's what I need from this third defensive lineman, whoever it is. I just need you in a moment whenever we need you to make a play. I need you to be able to make that play, and I just don't know who that
Exactly.
is.
That's what they need. And yeah, I agree with you. And because of that, it's like, we will see what happens, but it's ultimately a little bit scary. So,
I think we're pretty satisfied with the cornerback room. I don't think there's a ton of question marks there. I know that
in a good spot.
we've pretty much talked about how they're going to have sort of a rotating room, and that there's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be a true number 2 corner on this team. And we're both good with Trent McDuffie. Is that an
Mm-hmm.
accurate statement about how you
Yeah.
feel with the cornerback room?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trickman Duffy's going to do his thing. He's going to help everyone out. It's
Yeah.
going to benefit at the end of the day.
And then Sua Montaia, he won the left tackle battle early, so I think we feel pretty good about this offensive line, especially with Creed Humphrey getting his new deal. You feel good about the offensive line moving forward?
Yeah. And I think when you look at Sumantia, he's a guy here for a long time to staple. And again, another great draft pick the Chiefs were able to get that they needed.
Yeah, I think the fact that he was able to win the job out so quickly, I think they're going to try and move Wanye Morris to be more of a guard
Probably.
type player. I think that was a conversation of him coming out, is that he's probably going to be better as a guard. And they
Mm-hmm.
actually had him playing some guard snaps during the preseason
Mm.
when what our left guard, I'm blanking on his name,
Oh,
not Trey Smith,
Tooney?
Tootie,
No,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Whenever he was out, they were having him play some left guard spots. So I think they might have him become sort of that next offensive lineman that can play all around. He can play both tackle spots and both guard spots moving forward, so he can be that backup that seems to be on the
Mhm.
team for the next 7 years. Which, you know what, if you're able to find that guy, even if it means because he lost his original job, the Nick Allegrettis of the world are very valuable, and so maybe
Mhm.
that's what Wanye Morris ends up being. And
Yep.
I think that that's a quality role for a guy like that. So I feel pretty good about the offensive line, and I feel pretty good about this offensive line depth as well, because we
Yeah.
know at some point somebody's getting hurt.
Mhm. And what we have is people can play in both positions and move around in different times when they need them the most. So it makes sense for everybody.
You want to get a little before we end the show? Would you like to give a little preview on your thoughts of the first game, Chiefs Ravens?
So I'm gonna just tell people right off the bat, the Ravens are gonna be mad. They're gonna come out with everything they got. Expect it to be a closer game. It's not gonna be no Chiefs ring blowout. This down the third. It's gonna be a little bit quicker. It's gonna be a little bit closer for the most part. Different teams are gonna be battling. I expect Mahomes to do his thing. I expect to see this receiving court do really, really well. I do think, however, that Worthy's gonna get his first touchdown catch in this
Really,
game.
just
I think he will
already.
be able to, just like Rice was able to in his first time last year. One catch, one touchdown. I think Worthy could do it this year as well too. But I also want to say this: just if they start losing, don't freak out. Again, let's have these issues at the beginning of the season, so when we get to later down the line during the season and playoffs, we are in a better position so we can win. So I think the Chiefs can win. I have a good feeling they will. But if something were to happen, it's not the end of the world.
I think it's going to be a really good game. Not just because the first game of the year is always good because it's the first game of the year, but
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I'm not going to pick the Chiefs to lose that game, but let's
Mm-hmm.
be honest. Like, if the Chiefs are losing 4 games this year,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a top
This
contender
would be
for
a
the
game
Chiefs. Yeah, like,
probably.
this is going to be one of those, because I think the Chiefs will go, they'll win 13, 12, 13 games this year,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which means they have to lose like 4-ish games, give or take. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is one that you could see, Kansas City dropping.
Dropping possibly.
Yeah,
Then
I
the
think
freak out begins.
it's this one. I don't think that they're losing the Bengals game.
Mm-hmm.
But the Buffalo game is a good contender for being one of
Mm-hmm.
those losses. They're going to lose to some third place team in the
Mm-hmm.
what do we face? The AFC what East? No, we played the East last year.
We're
Are
gonna
we
play the no.
the
Is it not the
North? Are they playing
South?
the
It's the
Yeah, they're playing the
East.
AFC North this year.
Yeah, I
So I
think
don't know.
so.
What's the third Cleveland? Did they lose to
Cleveland.
Cleveland? You know, like
They could. You never
that like
know. I
it's
don't
just
think they lose to Cleveland.
one of those third place teams that Kansas City will lose to, right? The Steelers,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Like there are going to be 4 games this year Kansas City will drop. 2 of them will make sense. One of them will be the dumbest game you've ever
Like the
watched in your
Colts
life.
that one year.
Exactly like that. So, those are the kind of things that you want to keep an eye on. And let's
Mhm.
be honest, the Chiefs season doesn't start until December.
Exactly. That is true.
All right. We will be doing a post game show after the game on Thursday, so we can promise you that. So make sure you tune in after the game, win or loss. We will be there. And I think that's it. Football season is back. I know there are college football games being played on. Make sure you pay attention to the Royals, as they are currently a
Mm-hmm.
playoff team and are only 4 games behind the best league in the American League. So make
Only
sure you pay
four
attention.
games.
Yeah, I know. And this is a team that lost. This is a team that are on pace for the biggest comeback and biggest turnaround in MLB history, and they playing this game since like Abraham Lincoln was president. So
That is
they're
true.
they're looking to make the biggest turnaround in MLB history. So pay attention to the Royals. With that being said, that's everything that I've got. Caleb has everything you have.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we will see you guys on Thursday.